Right.
Oh,
Okay, sorry.
I'm currently doing some interviewing for them. So yeah, that's my background.
Okay, so Dr. Fong is a doctor at UCSD and also admission officer for UCSD Medical School. And Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm a third year at Cornell, and I went to Johns Hopkins for undergrad. And yeah, I'm currently done with my clinical rotations, so on my research block.
Okay, that's great. And Aron?
Hello, I'm a dental student at University of the Pacific Dental School, and I'm a second year right now. So at the beginning of the year, we started seeing patients, and then third year, we're going to be mostly just doing work with patients and less didactics.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for joining us. So I have one question, very simple for all three of you. And question is, what's one word to describe your journey to become a doctor and or throughout your medical journey? One word.
I think my word would be dedication, but
Dedication.
there's probably a lot more of them out there.
I see. And Amy?
I would say it's probably very tumultuous because I had to navigate essentially the entire medical school scene during COVID. Kind of trying to learn during a pandemic was definitely a new experience for a lot of people, myself included. I think that medical school was definitely not at all what I had imagined it would be. Just from listening to people talk about it or watching it on TV, I think real medicine is something that people would truly understand once you experience it, not something that you can understand just from hearing about it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Aron?
I think compassion, because everybody's going through like something different. You just have to understand how to communicate with them and really understand where they're coming from so that you can give them proper treatment.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. Thank you all. And let me spend 2 minutes only, okay, to share Hattie with all of you. So this event is organized by Hattie. I'm the founder of the company. We have a whole team, engineering team, social media team, and consultant team, okay? So here is actually the founding principle for Hattie is during COVID is to help our teachers who help our students, okay? So, and the entire product requirements were all written by our internship team, and most of them were listed here back about a couple of years ago. But the official website was done by full-time engineering staff. And we have a variety of resources, and not only for learning, like you guys for academics, but also we have life skills, meditation, leadership training, etc. Okay. And in addition to the learning, we really practice what we have learned through internships. And the internships not only with Hattie, but we also try to work with third parties to provide internships and community service jobs. And we sometimes post full-time job. Right now it's very limited. So, and also we promote, I would say promote more a balanced approach toward learning and a career through a variety of events. We don't promote one way, say, hey, this is the right way. We just give a platform for guest speakers to share and have a dialogue with our students and the parents. So with all said, thank you all and welcome to Hattie events. And I will now go through the events here. And so thanks to Sharon, and Sharon invited Dr. Fong, and I invited Amy and Aron, and Sharon actually is our educational consultant, my long-term friend. She's a doctor by training, specialized in diabetics. Her husband is an oncologist, a local doctor. So I will give the microphone to Sharon. Sharon, do I need to give the screenshot to you, or can you start asking questions and just share a little bit of background about yourself first, and then we can start the question and the Q&A. Go ahead, Sharon. You there? Yeah, you're muted.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, yeah, I graduated from medical school in China, in Shanghai, and came here for a PhD program and got my PhD in biomedical sciences and did research in obesity and diabetes area. Then I did consulting for about 10, 15 years before I concentrated on my kids' education and more interested in education related projects. So I know Dan for like 15 years, more than 15 years, and the Sunah about like 10 years. Yeah, so since I'm also have a medicine background, and I will, but it's very different here in China, and so it's more complicated here. So 3 of them will be able to answer questions for people. Yeah, so I will start. The first one is, when did you start to have interest in medicine, and was there a particular person or event influence you? And when and how did you make a final decision to pursue it? Okay, any of you can start. If you don't want to answer a particular question, you can also skip. Yeah. Sunah,
Should I start, or Amy, do you want to start, or Aron?
I think, sure, I can start. So I think that I started to have an interest in medicine probably around middle school. I realized I was interested in biology and human physiology, and that's kind of when the idea of being a doctor first came into my head. And I don't really think there's a particular event or a person who had influenced that. It was more so like every aspect of my interest kind of converged on this path. And I would say that it was a pretty organic decision for me to make because of the fact that, you know, this is something that I've always been interested in, though I've kind of known pretty early on that I wanted to do surgery or something that's, you know, like procedural within medicine. So I think that was probably one thing that's a little more unique. And with regards to how I made the final decision to pursue it, I would say, so I took one gap year between college and medical school. And during that gap year, I went and explored something entirely different. I tried to do a corporate job and see if that would be something I'd be interested in doing. And I think just by the sheer fact that I still wanted to apply to medical school afterwards, and that I still was interested in becoming a doctor, showed me that this is something that I can put my foot down and say, this is what I want to do.
Kind of. Oh, Aron, did you want to speak next?
Yeah. So
Okay.
for me, when I was younger, I was always interested in science and math rather than other subjects. So that was kind of the beginning. And then my dentist was also very like nice to me. I always like look forward to going to the dentist. So I kind of wanted to be able to treat other people the way that my dentist treated me. And that was like one of the bigger influences. And then moving on to high school, when I started shadowing dentists and kind of seeing how everything works, it just like further developed my intrigue into the occupation. So I made the final decision to pursue it probably when I went to undergrad, because the program that I was a part of was an accelerated program. So I didn't really have that much of a choice whether or not I could have changed majors, of course, but I was already like so intent on becoming a dentist that I was already locked in.
Yeah, and I think I probably didn't decide until my sophomore year in college, but my interest was kind of in science and in business and kind of anthropology. But I ended up, my parents were pharmacists, but I ended up working for a minor emergency clinic during high school. And I really appreciated how the internal medicine doc took care of his patients in the community, and he kind of became a role model for me. So in college, I tried to figure out if medicine is the way to go by volunteering. I volunteered in a women's shelter, domestic violence shelter, and I volunteered in the UCSF emergency room. And then I joined, like, the pre-med clubs on campus. I try to talk to anybody in, medicine or business or anthropology. But in the end, I went with medicine because my father passed away actually that beginning of my sophomore year in college. And I wanted to have some financial stability, but also I wanted to help people. And medicine was, kind of what I thought, when I was just turning 20 would be a good path for me. So it wasn't a single event or a person, but it was kind of, my life experience until then that helped me decide. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. So next question, if I'm interested in medicine, what should I do during middle school or high school? I think Dr. Sunah Feng just talked about it a little bit. And also, should I take it into consideration when I apply for college? And some people say, if you want to go to medical school, don't go to a college, give like you are not be able to get a good GPA, things like that. So, and also, do you advise people decide before starting college or during, and even in Amy's case, after college? So, and what's your advice to people, for high school people or even for college people?
I think that, I think that, for me, like I have not encouraged my own two children to go into medicine because it's a really long, hard path. So, I did 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 1 year of internship, 4 years of radiology residency, another year of fellowship. And then it took me another 4 years to get partnership in my private practice. So, it's, unless you really want to do it, it's a very hard path. So I would recommend, if you are interested, you're in middle school, high school, college, or whatever level you're at, to try to get some hands-on experience, whatever that may be, by volunteering, by taking on jobs, to see what it's really like day in and day out, and if it's something that you would like to dedicate yourself to. Because you, of course, being a doctor is can be all encompassing, but I hope that it doesn't overwhelm your life in a way that you have to sacrifice too much. Because I did feel like at times I had to sacrifice seeing friends or doing something that might be more fun. But I think Robert just asked me if I took pre-med requirements during my freshman year. My freshman year, I went to Berkeley because at the time I thought I wanted to do chemistry, and that was the best school at the time to study chemistry. So I started scrambling my sophomore year to finish the requirements, and I had to take a summer school. I think I did organic chemistry during the summer and so forth. So it was kind of tough to get out in 4 years, do the MCAT and do the pre-med classes. So I guess the earlier you decide, it's easier in a way. But also I have a couple friends who, a friend who took 2 years to do a different job, totally out of medicine before she came into medical school. I have another friend who majored in art history and did sciences too, and she went on to medical school. So there's no one path that fits everybody, and I think that's the good thing about being in the US. Like you almost want to be a well-rounded person who can communicate and see people from, you know, all aspects of life with different histories to be able to relate to them. So I don't know if I answered your question. So yeah, should I take it into consideration? Oh, when I choose a college, I think when I have a friend's daughter who's a first year medical student at UCSD, and she purposely went to a smaller school. So you can either, you know, you could be a small fish in a big pond or a big fish in a small pond, if that makes sense. So for her, she decided to go to a smaller school. She did very well, you know, and went on to medical school. So I think it depends on the person. If they should, you know, if you already know before college, it is something you should consider. Yeah, what kind of, and also even if you're at the end of college and you haven't quite decided and thinking about it, there's a lot of programs now where you do like a pre-med master's program where you can kind of gear up and apply. Another friend's daughter, she was more in that latter kind of aspect where she didn't have the highest GPA, but she took a summer between her junior and senior year and studied really hard on the MCATs, did well on that. And then she applied to multiple master's program, which is kind of a program geared toward pre-med students who maybe didn't have the highest GPA, but she ended up getting accepted to Drexel, where they have you do a year of master's in kind of biological sciences, but then you're also guaranteed a spot as a first year medical student finishing that program. So there are multiple pathways to get there for sure. Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah, kind of to echo exactly what Dr. Feng said, at least in my experience, because I was pretty sure even during middle school that I wanted to do medicine, but all of my mentors at the time had said, do not write that in your college applications, because a lot of times admissions officers will just think that it's a very immature thing to see on your college app if you at this age are saying, I want to be a doctor when you have no idea what being a doctor is like. So I would say that maybe even if you are pretty certain you want to pursue medicine, don't just put that on your application when you're applying to colleges yet at that stage. And exactly like Dr. Feng said, there are many different paths to medical school. Like what she was saying, the master's programs. I know a few friends who had done what it's called SIP program at Georgetown, where it's you take first year classes with medical students, and then you get a GPA, and then from there on you apply to go to medical school. And there's a pretty high yield rate for them to get into Georgetown's medical school. But again, if you're sure right during college, you can always, you know, take a gap year, don't take a gap year, and then apply directly into medical school. And there's the option to go to medical school, like to get an MD degree, and there's also the option to go to medical school to get a DO degree. I think for the latter, there's more focus on maneuvers. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that's what I understand of it. And yeah, so just there are many different paths to becoming a doctor, and there's no single one that's like this is a cookie cutter way for you to become or pursue medicine.
For me, I think, like she said, middle school is like a little bit early to start, but if you're interested, then like definitely just like focusing on science, honestly. And then during high school, what I personally did, I volunteered for a nonprofit organization. So what it was it was a medical van and a dental van that like drove around to communities in need that needed like medical work. So they would give the homeless population their medical attention. And I think definitely volunteering is a really good way to build up your resume. And taking it into consideration when you choose a college, I think just go somewhere where you're confident you can do well, but also make sure that the teachers there are good, because a good teacher makes a big difference. Like to how much like you retain after the class. And you can start before or during college, but during college, I'd recommend shadowing a lot just to make sure that you really know that is what you want to do.
Okay, so we move on to the third question. What was your major for undergraduate? And the second part probably for Dr. Fan. Does a biology or chemistry major give you an advantage for medical school admission? Can students major in English, history, humanities, social science? I think Dr. Fan also gave an example. Her friend or friend's child majored in something else, but you can, yeah, just share your experience.
Yeah, so I think that yeah, it doesn't matter at all what your major is. And I think that it's more, you know, just like when you apply for college or for medical school, it's a question of, you know, how involved are you? So are you, you know, involved in many, many things superficially? Are you involved in one or two things more in depth? But I think whatever your involvement is, sometimes the depth matters more than, you know, the number of activities you have, if that makes any difference. So long as you can get the requirements in and have enough experience to do well on the MCAT, I think it actually, you'll stand out more if you don't major in a science. But just to give you my own experience, I started out as a chemistry major, and then I switched to neuroscience major. No, I'm sorry. Then I switched to undeclared, and then neuroscience. And then I just basically got out with the molecular cellular biology degree because that's what I could finish in 4 years. But yeah, I don't think the major matters at all. Long as you do well, you know, your GPA is good. And really, I mean, if you're going to go on to medical school, college is the time that you can pursue interests in classes that you might not have a chance to do in the future. So I would urge anyone thinking about what to declare for their major to declare something that you're interested in. Yeah. Did I miss something? Oh.
So I majored in bioengineering and double majored in applied math during college. I would say that for me personally, because those two degrees actually had very little to do with like biology or chemistry, I had quite a bit of catching up to do at the start of medical school because the last bio class I had taken was in high school essentially. So there was quite a bit of like learning to do at the start. But for people who had majored in biology or chemistry, it was quite a smooth integration for them to go directly from college into medical school. So I would say that maybe not necessarily during med school admissions, but maybe during the preclinical years when you're kind of learning all that basic science and how it all integrates into medicine. And I think that you can absolutely major in like anything that you want, like English, history, or other humanities. But those majors might take a little bit more planning because for a science major, just by fulfilling your course requirements for graduation, you might already have taken all the pre-med courses. But for an English major, you might have to, work around your schedule to make sure that you can integrate things like orgo or chemistry into your curriculum.
Good point.
Yeah. My major in undergrad was biology, and I don't think that bio or chemistry give you a major advantage for admissions, but it does give you a solid foundation as for the classes that you need to take, because you'll have a stronger background in the science classes. And you can definitely major in whatever you want to, as long as just do whatever you enjoy, I'd say, because as long as you take the requirements that you need to in order to apply, and you have a strong standardized test score with a good like background in your resume, then I'm sure you'll be able to get in.
Okay. I will combine the next two questions. What was it like to be a pre-med student in college? Did it require a lot of careful planning to fulfill the requirements? And what medicine-related extracurricular activities were you involved in college?
I can start for this one.
Okay.
For me, University of the Pacific kind of lays everything out for you. So it kind of tells you what classes you need to take along with the prerequisites to those classes. So it's all very linear. You just get to pick which upper div bio classes you want to take first. As for medicine related extracurricular activities, I was part of the pre-dental society where they let us volunteer in communities around the Stockton campus. And so we would go participate in events like California Dental Association Cares, where it's like a large organization where they provide for the needy in the community. And then also just other clubs. For example, I was in origami club just to improve my hand skills, and like scope, I forgot what it stands for, but it's just more volunteer work.
So for me also, there wasn't too much extra planning that I needed to do just because the engineering curriculum covered a lot of the courses. I think I just had to fit in, I think, 2 writing courses and also Orgo 2 to fulfill all the pre-med requirements. With regards to medicine related extracurricular activities, I would probably bucket them into 3 major categories, and Dr. Feng can definitely speak to this as well later. I would say it's majorly research, volunteer, and clinical exposure. Nowadays, I'm assuming if you're on this call, you're thinking of applying to a big academic institution, then a lot of them are going to look at your research. So it would be really beneficial to be able to produce 1 or 2 publications during your college career. I think that you can speak to very confidently about and with a lot of knowledge and passion. So definitely start research early. Number 2, I think for volunteering, like medicine at its core is a service profession. So you want to show that you're interested in helping others, you're interested in starting something that you're going to carry through, and also that you want to be proactive and kind of participate in your community. So I think that's also a really important thing that you have to do. And the third, clinical exposure, I think try to shadow a lot, try to go see what doctors do in their office on clinic days, and also go shadow in the OR if you can, and just kind of understand the profession a little more to be able to make an informed decision. For the extracurricular activities I personally did in college, I did a lot of research. I participated in something called design team, which I thought was really, really cool. It's essentially where we had groups of physicians and NGOs who were confronted with an issue at the bedside, and they took it over to teams of undergrad students who were studying engineering, and we'd try to come up with a solution to it at the end of the semester. And the 2 that I worked on, one was a uterine contraction monitor for developing settings, and another was kind of like a cancer localization type device for people who had breast cancer that had spread to your armpit, essentially. And I did jail tutorial, which gave you a lot of interface with people who are kind of, at the margins of society and are facing a lot of challenges just to kind of reintegrate back into it, and kind of seeing that entire perspective was something that I had talked about a lot in my application. And I think you just have to find something that you're passionate in, and then you'll have a good application.
Yeah, I think what Amy just said was all true, that you kind of you kind of put the extracurriculars into those 3 buckets. And just even on our interviewing, we'll sometimes have similar applicants on the same day, if that makes sense. So like a lot of applicants I notice who do more of global health, for instance, will have on like a same day or same week, so that we can kind of compare apples to apples, if that makes sense. But whatever you can do as far as research goes, or clinical rotations or shadowing. And, anything else like we've had, a lot of, I notice people who are scribes, they actually take notes for physicians or physician assistants. And so they're right at the right-hand person, I guess, who's taking the notes for them. So and I noticed the people who have had experience working in other jobs are sometimes more interesting to speak to as well when you're interviewing because they have a little more life experience. As far as what I did during college and high school, it's been so long, so let me try to remember. This is in the 80s and 90s, but so in high school, I did work at a minor emergency clinic, like just doing reception and just taking people's blood pressure, just things like that, easy stuff. In college, specifically for medicine, I volunteered in the UCSD emergency room. I volunteered at the women's shelter. And then I just, joined pre-medical, groups on campus and whatnot. But I also found that a lot of pre-med students are very competitive and they will not tell you what they're doing or not doing. And so I, again, in my own personal experience, I had to learn to listen to myself, like, okay, what am I capable of doing now? And, what are my goals at this time? So, if that makes sense, you kind of have to look at the big picture, but also always turn to yourself about what your needs are and what you're able to accomplish, for that semester, quarter, or so forth. Because, the bottom line is extracurriculars are important, but, the getting the grades and the MCAT is kind of the foundation, the baseline. So make sure you take care of that first and then add on the extracurriculars. Yeah.
Okay.
Did I answer both questions? Yeah.
Someone. Okay, you all finish. Okay, now I see some people are asking questions in the chat area is related to the subject. So, one is, what is the benefit of a pre-med group in college? Have you joined the pre-med group in college?
Yeah, I really didn't. I mean, we had at Berkeley, we had a pre-professional counselor. So like if you were gonna apply to medical school, law school, business school, then they had specific counselors there to help you. So maybe Aron or Amy could speak to that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you can go.
Go ahead, Aron.
Okay. So I was part of the pre-dental society at my school, but the University of the Pacific kind of caters their program towards the dental school because it's kind of a feeder school to the San Francisco campus dental school. And they pretty much just went over like all the requirements, made sure that we were keeping on track with our classes and GPAs, and just it also provided us a few volunteer opportunities, which is really nice because we got to work with dentists in our area. Also, Evan asked in chat, he heard that dental school requires less years to graduate than medical school. The program that I'm a part of is a 3-year program, but most other dental schools are 4-year programs.
Okay. Okay, so sum it up, you all mentioned there are 3 buckets, one volunteering, research, and the clinical exposure. So these are the extracurricular activities so if you are interested in medical school, either as high school students or college students, you can think about these 3 areas. Okay, we move on to the next question. Many students take gap years between college and medical school. I think now is popular, maybe not that popular when Dr. Feng's medical students. So what are the pros and cons of that? Okay.
I can speak to that. So basically, for me personally, I took one gap year and I worked at Bloomberg during my gap year in mergers and acquisitions, and then later in technical operations. So nothing at all related to medicine. And I think that for me personally, that was a good experience because I really got to learn how to live by myself in an urban city, how to really be an adult, and how to pay taxes, how to get water and electricity and internet. So I think it kind of gave me a time to take a step back and really learn, how to live by myself and really, I guess, navigate the entire landscape of just being someone or being an adult. Um, I would say the pro or the cons of it would be, I mean, for one, for people who are taking a gap year or doing research, I can imagine that money would be one component, especially if you're not receiving a stipend or you didn't get a fellowship to do that. If your family can support it, that'd be awesome. But I know for people with economic difficulties, that might be something that you have to consider because eventually people would be missing out on 1 year of attending salary, which is not insignificant. Um, the other con of doing something that's not related to medicine or research that I had not experienced or expected until I went on the interview trail was people would ask, well, why are you doing something that's in finance when you eventually want to be a doctor? I think just being able to kind of articulate your reasons would be really important. And for me personally, it was so that I can kind of, see how to communicate with stakeholders who are, all walks of life, people who are end users, people who are clients, and people who want something from you, people that you have to sell something to, just kind of learning how to speak with all these different groups of people and learning how to kind of speak their language was something that I thought very much applied to navigating the physician and patient relationship. But again, that's going to be a very personal answer that's unique to each person.
Yeah, Sharon's exactly right. I mean, when I went to med school in the early 90s, gap year was not popular, but I did notice the people who did take time off or had other careers, like one worked for 2 years, came in to my class, and another was already like married with a wife and a baby on the way. They tended to be more mature and kind of can handle the stress of medical school better, I thought. So yeah, if you can afford it, if you can have some other life experience outside of medicine, I think that would be great. Yeah.
So, so as an interviewer, now when you interview candidates, do you see more and more students taking gap year?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of students already have other kinds of jobs, and it's it's more common, certainly more common than when I went. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But a lot of, I would say the number one job I've seen is a scribe who, take the notes for the physicians or physician assistants. And I have seen researchers, people who've been working on their masters or PhDs doing research. And there's been a splatter of other jobs I've seen as well, like people who've worked for Planned Parenthood, some people who worked at NGOs, but some of them are straight from college too. So that's probably still the majority, but a lot of people are taking time off to do other things.
Amy, among your fellow students, what would you say about the percentage, like 50-50?
Yeah, so I would say it's probably now more prevalent that my peers have taken a gap year, and that if you hadn't, it's a rarity. Now, there are more and more people that I've seen who have had a whole career before they decided to switch over to medicine. I think there are 2 people in my class who are like in their 30s. And one was a full-on lawyer beforehand, but then found out that he was interested in also learning about the healthcare side. So he applied to medical school, and another had a whole career at Ernst & Young and decided that he wanted to be a doctor. So I think, people come from all over and at all age groups.
First,
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, personally speaking, I didn't take a gap year, but I know many people that did take gap years. Like for instance, one of my family friends is coming into this school that I'm at right now after taking, I think 3 or 4 years of gap years. She was interested in dentistry, so she worked as a dental assistant for the past few years, and she's just been gathering like real world experiences, kind of like learning how to work with patients during her time off. And then I know, like Amy said, there's a few people in my class that are 30 plus years old, and one of them I know was actually a hygienist before she applied to dental school. So yeah.
Okay. So now,
Sharon, should I answer some of the questions in the chat if they're quick?
Oh
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, you can maybe some probably many of them haven't read the question, so you briefly say the question.
One, as James said, it sounds like medical internships and volunteer work is great. You know, basically, how do you find those? So I think you reach out to all your contacts, your doctor, your local hospital. Here in San Diego, for instance, there are volunteer opportunities at Scripps and Sharp and Children's Hospital and Palomar Hospital. And I think I saw a question about vaccinations. It would really shock me if they did not require vaccinations, COVID vaccinations. And you can start as a high schooler to volunteer. Even the internship program at Palomar Hospital in San Diego, you can do it. You need to apply, but you can do it as a high schooler and you can get hands-on experience working with patients. Yes, I did feel a lot of fatigue and burnout going straight from college to medical school. I didn't take any time off. And I think that's about it. Okay, so, 4-year undergrad, okay. Okay, so the timing, you do in the US, unless you can apply from high school to like a 6-year college and medical school program. There are a few of those, but the usual more prevalent route is you do 4 years of undergrad college, then you do 4 years of medical school, and then you do 1 year of internship, and then your residency depends on what primary care or specialty you go to, and that can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years. And then you can, if you're gonna work in a kind of like West Coast or East Coast, then you probably need to do a fellowship as well. And that could be anywhere from 1 to 3 years as far as timing. I think that's what I can answer really quick. Yeah.
I just want to add really quickly. So I grew up in San Diego as well. And when I was in middle school, high school, I volunteered at the VA hospital, which is right next to UCSD. And they have a pretty streamlined process of applying to be a volunteer there. And there are actually a lot that you can do. So I would highly recommend that. And for research, I, back in the day, just cold emailed all the professors who were in the bioengineering department. And one of them was pretty receptive to having a high school student kind of work for him in the summer, pro bono though. So yeah, if that's something you're interested in, I would say just try your chances and, can't hurt.
Yeah, and also I think Amy and Aron also mentioned you can volunteer for nonprofit organization, right? And those organizations can also be medicine related. Yeah. Anything else?
I can answer some of the specific questions in chat if we have time. So Lisa asked the attrition rate for the dental acceleration program, and if you can't get through it, can you get a BS or BA degree and pursue other programs like pharmacy? So the core of the program for the dental school or dental program is in undergrad, you're a BS major. So you will be graduating with the bachelor's in science for bio, and you will be able to pursue other occupations. But if you're asking if the dental program and the pharmacy program are connected, they are not. So you'll be you'll have to apply like outside of the program. And then Evan asked if we take dental school during college years or after college years. During or after. Dental school is a separate program after you finish your undergraduate program. So you'll be taking it after college.
And then, I'm sorry, I see one question from Nana Lu about UCSD, but I'm not quite sure if I understand the question. It says something about international courses. Does the school accept international courses toward prerequisites? I am not sure.
Yeah, I think probably she means, you know, pre-med, and if those pre-med requirements, if any international college, I mean, credit.
The
Yeah.
website,
sure.
sorry, the website of UCSD lists a couple of like biology, physics, chemistry as a prerequisites. And they mention also they accept international courses. Cause I had my college degree from China, so I just wondering, do they accept like the older than 10 years courses to cover the prerequisites?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's a time limit on that. I mean, as far as getting your California license, I know that because I trained in New York City, and once you take your third part of your boards, the USMLE, the United States Medical Licensing Examination, once you take, there's 3 parts, and once I took the part 3, you have to apply for the California medical license within 5 years, or you have to take a special test again. So that's the only time requirement that I know of. I mean, there's also like, once you've done everything, internship, residency, and so forth, and you take your boards, like my radiology boards I took, then you have to certify every 10 years. So, but I'm not really sure about college courses, if there's a time limit on that or not. Sorry.
Yeah, this is for the medical school admission prerequisites. That's not,
Probably you can write to them to ask. The specific question.
I will sign up their office hour later.
Okay. Okay, let us finish the last question, and if we have more time, we can ask the audience to ask more questions. So the last question: what characteristics are important for working in the medical field?
When I was a 4th-year medical student, I helped out the admissions committee with interviews. And at that time, we did classical interviews where you have 2 or 3 interviewers, you have their file open and you kind of read it and then meet the candidate and interview them with the list of questions that, I came up with. But right now we've switched to MMIs, mini medical interviews. It's almost like speed dating because we're trying to be more scientific about how to find medical students, and hopefully what we're doing will result in better doctors, we hope. So we actually interview people blind, meaning me as an interviewer, I don't see the student's file until we get back into committee. The candidate has a couple minutes to read a scenario. It's usually an ethical or moral dilemma. And then they read it for a couple of minutes and then they have like 8 minutes to discuss it with me. So right now we're looking for people who can think on their feet, who can look at both sides, be able to put themselves in other people's shoes. So we're actually, I think once you get the interview, the school definitely wants you, at least on paper. So we are looking for, during the interviews, for the soft skills, the people skills. the communication skills, the ability to see, people with compassion, and in an ethical and moral way. So the people who tend to be more well-read, not just in sciences, tend to do better, I think, during our interviews. So it's kind of beating around the bush, not answering your question directly, Sharon, but it's more of the people skills I think we're looking for at the end as we rank the candidates. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with her in the fact that communication is very important, because no matter how like smart you are, no matter how hard you study, if you're unable to like communicate with your patients, be compassionate for them, understand where they're coming from, then it's going to be very difficult and stressful to do your job properly. Another important characteristic is just perseverance, because there's a lot that you still won't know, and you just need to learn how to adapt to that and just ask for help when you need to in school, because while you're in school, that's probably the place that you'll be able to learn the most, because there's so many people around you willing to help you and nurture your growth.
I think this is a really difficult question for me to answer, just because I feel like I don't really have the experience of actually bearing responsibility in the medical field yet to kind of be able to speak to it to that level. But from what I've seen so far, I think it's so important to not be apathetic and to kind of want to do medicine and be committed to medicine for the right reasons. Because I think that along the way, there are so many obstacles and just so many days where, you're doing the most menial task, but you're still, in those days, you should want to do this. And I think it's so easy to become calloused and just kind of beaten down the process of medicine, because I think that it's one of the few that's left in this world that's truly very bureaucratic and hierarchical, where because it's so involved and so important that you get everything right, that you really have to be able to listen to authority and kind of do what you're told in a sense. So I think understanding all of that and still know that you want it is an important thing to kind of be honest to yourself about. And another is, I think that if people are pursuing medicine for just stability or, like supposed economic benefits of wanting to be a doctor, it is the absolute wrong reason to go into medical school. Because I think that there are so many other paths you can pursue to achieve those goals without having to go through like almost a 20-year education if you count undergrad med school, like residency, fellowship, and everything else involved. It's a huge investment, time-wise, money-wise, and really like everything wise of your life. So I think that just knowing for a fact that you want to do medicine before jumping into it is so important. And that I think that's why a lot of people don't want kids who are middle schoolers or high schoolers to say, I want to be a doctor, because at that age, you really don't know that you want to be a doctor. You really don't know what you're committing yourself to. And I think that just understanding all of that and truly making a mature decision before you say you want to pursue medicine is extremely important.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. I think time has changed. Maybe 20 years ago, there is that's a legitimate reason, but now I think it's very different. You can get a high-paid job right after college, sometimes even not college, and so the financial reason, it should not be your priority. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think one person in the chat area asked her or his son is one now is admitted to immunology master's program and one go to medical school eventually. And I think that's a very common path, and get a master's in science, life science, and then go to medical school. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. My brother did that. My brother went and did a master's at Georgetown, and then he went to medical school, and he's a ER doc now. So yeah, that's a very common path.
Right.
And then I see someone else asked that their son is interested in medical research, but not necessarily in medical practice. You know, most of the schools, academic schools, have combined MD, PhD program. So a lot of those MD, PhD students go on to do medical research, and then not so much clinical medicine. So that might be something to consider.
Yeah, but MD PhD program is the good things, but bad things. I mean, it's usually you get the scholarships. You don't need to pay the tuition, which is very expensive. But on the other hand, you usually need 4 years at least for PhD part, and then 4 years for MD part. So MD PhD is about 8 years or even longer. So yes, need commitment. Definitely. Okay, so I think it's we are it's 6 o'clock, and I think we also answered most of the questions in chat area. If we missed your question, maybe you can email.
Yes, I asked a question in the chat, but I guess it was missed.
Okay, go ahead.
My question was how to match into certain medical specialties, because some of them are harder than others, right? I think radiology is one of the major specialties that harder to match into. Derma is another one. And how to match into them, and how important is the medical school that you go to in this match process? The certain medical school limit your chance of match into certain specialties. Thank you.
That's $1 million question. I'd also like the answer to.
You are studying in medical school, so you should be in the middle of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if things have changed. Maybe Amy will chime in. But when I went through medical school, basically, like if you kind of look at your clinical rotations, and they're starting earlier, thank goodness. And then if you kind of formulate what specialty you want to do. So when I was going through medical school, I thought about surgery, pediatrics, psychiatry, and radiology. And so third year of medical school, like first 2 years is more science and problem-based learning. And then starting third year is when you're full-time in the hospital clinical rotations. And so you want to actually schedule your rotations in a way that you hit your stride. Like you don't want your first rotation to be something you're interested in going to, because you want to do the best in that rotation, because that's where you're going to get your reference, your recommendation letters. So you kind of schedule your third year rotations in that way. And then let me find so then your third year, you kind of go through all the general rotations. And then if you still don't know, then your fourth year, you kind of do more specialty clinical rotations. Like I remember doing dermatology and anything else you might be interested in. And then you kind of decide what you want to do. As far as how important the prestigiousness of the medical school name, it's a little bit important, but it's not that important, because there's a process called the match. So basically, you put your application in for your internship and residency, and you rank them in the order that you want to go. And then the programs rank the students in the order that they want the medical students to come. And then you have a big reveal day called match day. So the name of the school necessarily, might configure into the residency program director's equation and how they rank you. But I don't think it matters that much. I think it sort of matters how well you did in your rotations and your recommendation letters and so forth. And I think maybe it was a little difficult because when I went to UCSD, it was a pass-fail school, meaning that we didn't have grades, which made it nice because all the students worked together really well. But also maybe it made it harder for the residency programs to rank us. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's different now, Amy.
I would say it's probably still around the same. For us, our clinical year has grades, but aside from that, all preclinical is pass fail. I think now with step 1 going pass fail, it's apparently they're gonna shift the focus on the step 2. I took step 1 pass fail and did not have to prepare for it the way that a lot of prior people did. But now I'm in the process of preparing for step 2, and I think that's kind of ultimately determine what specialties I can apply to. I'm personally really interested in surgery, so we'll see like where the chips fall, I guess. But yeah.
Did that answer your question, James? Or
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Amy. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Dr. Feng, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
If you're an international student, F1 visa,
Yeah.
undergraduate, say studying UCSD, can you apply for medical school in the United States?
I don't know actually. I haven't personally interviewed anyone with the F1, but during my internship and residency in New York City, we had a lot of international doctors, and some of them did graduate from American medical schools, if that makes sense. So I don't know specifically at UCSD if they,
my guess is
yeah.
My guess is it's okay. You can attend medical school and also you can do your residency here. The only difficult part is you cannot use medicine as your profession to get a green card. So that's why many people will not choose to get into medical field. But there are certain ways to get away, and you can go to serve in an underprivileged area in order to get a special exemption. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if you have like a permanent or visa or something like that, you can apply to med school. I know 2, I think international Chinese friends of mine, one's at Vandy, one's at UVA. So, and they had no problem applying to med school. So it might be a little harder to gain admission because of all the fact, all the different hoops you have to jump through legally. But I don't think it's a problem with regards to applying to med school.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
I think we'll conclude our panel discussion, and we'd like to thank Dr. Feng and Amy and Aron. And if people have more questions, you can reach out to Haddee.com. Maybe they can relay the questions to them. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Dr. Feng. Thank you, Amy and Aron. I just want to share that Amy's mother is a local doctor here. And if you guys stay, I will put her information. She treats me almost on a weekly basis. She's a Chinese doctor. So anyway, and so anyway, okay, I'll let you guys go. I will stay on the chat a little bit in case folks want to follow up. Thank you, Sharon, to organize this beautiful event. Have a great Saturday night. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Aron. Okay.